Good evening and welcome to the tea table. I am so happy you've joined me this late afternoon, early evening. It's twilight here. It's very, very cold, and I wanted to wear a little muff tonight and my furs in solidarity with this tragic battle that's going on in the Ukraine. And I have Fritz Kreisler playing, the wonderful Viennese violinist from the last century. And he relates to this because, you know, in World War I, he was conscripted into the German army, had no choice, and they sent him to the front, and here he's this great violinist. And finally, one of his fingers was blown off, and someone said to the general, "Do you know who this is?" And so they finally sent him back, and he was a beautiful person who was considered the greatest violinist of the last century. And it was because he was able to put his heart on his violin. People would go to his concerts and they would leave and they would say, "I feel so close to Fritz Kreisler. I feel like he's a relative. He gave such love." And you know, he said, "If I am loving and kind, my tone will be beautiful." Everything connects. And he was from Vienna. As a young boy, his father was a doctor, and his father was an amateur violinist and had played in the home in string quartet. And little Fritz was the baby, and he was listening. And one day at the age of 4, he picked up a violin and played a piece of Beethoven flawlessly. And they were all astounded, and they realized, we have a little genius here. And so he was sent to music school. And Sigmund Freud was a good friend of the family. It's that era, late 1800s, early 1900s, and he was in the home, his father's home. His father was medical, as I said, and his father was very much, in the day, people played music in the home. That's the way it should be today. And you know, his songs have so much love and pathos. I thought I'm going to play that for a prayer of solidarity with these people that are caught in such a terrible situation across the ocean. So let us pray for them, that God will quickly resolve this and help them. Oh my. Well, you know, a muff is like a good friend. It's hard for me to put it down, but I'm going to now, because if you haven't gotten your tea yet, please get your tea and I'll be waiting for you. Well, I have a special, I'm going to pull it toward me, maybe you can see it then. I've chosen a really special pot that has an old world Victorian look. It could be any time in history. And I'm going to pour out this wonderful hot, do you see the hot tea? Oh my. We need this tonight. I had been fighting a little cold and I've been taking vitamins. But do you know what's helped me the most? Hot tea. It's a cure. I'll have a little splash of milk. And I've got these furs on. I'm staying warm. And should we have it? Try it? That is so good. That is so nice and hot. And I've chosen this cup for you because it's very royal and European looking. You know, the Europeans, and especially the Eastern Europeans, They love their color, and it's so cold there, and they wear fur. But they always have their hot tea. And they have such lovely hospitality. I have a lot of friends that I met in Vienna that were from all the Eastern European Baltic states. And they dressed with such color and personality, and their musical skills and talent and love. I love those people. I had a voice teacher named Lilia, and she was from Bulgaria. And then a man from Vienna, a wonderful elderly gentleman, so dignified. He said, I'll tell you a secret. If you really are going to be Viennese, you're going to be part Bulgarian, part Hungarian, part Lithuanian, part on and on, Ukrainian, and they all know their country and love their country. But Vienna was the place, it was the rescue place. If they could get to Vienna, they could be safe from the east. And then after the war, or in the war, Fritz Kreisler was able to get out and get to the west, which was a bit, you know, this feels so repeated of the last century, doesn't it? There's nothing new under the sun. Well, for your treat today, you know, European chocolate is the best, and these are special, special cookies for you. They're chocolate marshmallow cakes. Oh my, they look grand, don't they? I'll show you. So, and I have candles burning tonight. And the songs that Fritz Kreisler is playing, it's from a CD called Kreisler Plays Kreisler. And a lot of them are his own original songs. And he composed, and he wrote, and he played, and he traveled all over America, and he was beloved. And he had a good wife who was a good business lady, and she made sure that he got paid, because before that time, musicians hardly got paid anything. And she would negotiate and make sure that he was remunerated enough for all of his hard work. So she's looked to as quite a lady. And it takes everybody to help make things go, doesn't it? Well, I thought with my fur, I have a little cameo tonight, cameo earrings. And I told you last time I wanted to talk about Abraham Lincoln, our wonderful Civil War president. And after that, Tea Talk, a dear friend called Melanie from Connecticut, yes, my daughter-in-law's mother, and she told me that Sunday night they were showing a history special on Abraham Lincoln. And so we got to see it. And it's fantastic, and I highly recommend it. It's still going on the History Channel. You can watch it, and it will be up on YouTube eventually, but very well done. And then there was another portion on General Grant, of course, the Civil War general, and such a hard time in American history, but such a great man, Abraham Lincoln. And, you know, he married a girl named Mary, and they were very opposite. He was tall and thin, and they said she was short and round. That's how they put it. She was 5'2", and he was over 6'4", I think. And she was from a well-educated, wealthy family that had the best she had the best education, and especially for a girl at that time. Her father sent her to the best school, And then he sent her on to the next level of school. She was fluent in French. She was interested in political things. She could hold her own. She was outspoken. And here Abraham Lincoln had only had 3 years of formal schooling, if that. And when you watch this program, you see he loved books. And one time he had to work 3 days in a terrible farm, digging dirt, oh my goodness, just to earn a book. That's how much he loved books. And he had a rather sad life. His father was a good man, but was very severe. And his mother had died when he was young. And he was so sad. But then the father brought a stepmother, and this was a good stepmother. And she loved Abraham Lincoln. And she opened the world. She couldn't read or write, but she had brought books with her. And Abraham Lincoln taught himself to read, and then became acquainted with neighbors who loaned him books and helped him. And he would, it's a true story, he would read by candlelight in his cabin because they were poor, and he had to work hard all day long with his father just to survive. And he felt that that gave him character, and he felt that God planned it because he was very, very strong. He won, just like George Washington, he won the race. He could throw the ball the farthest. He could win the race the fastest. And in wrestling, he could win. He was a champion. And you know, he did chop all those logs. The famous log cabin, he was raised in a one-room log cabin. But he was honest Abe. Do you know he had the same characteristic as George Washington? This complete, transparent honesty. He couldn't tell a lie. And this is why doors opened for him, because people respected him. People trusted him. And he studied on his own and under another attorney and studied law. And he was clever. And his father, though he was severe, had a good sense of humor and would tell funny stories. And so Abraham Lincoln developed quite a wit, and he was known as a witty storyteller and very well spoken. He won cases, and you know, but he had a rather sad, really very sad life, because then when he married Mary, she had lost her mother when she was young, and she had a sad life. And I think when I read about her, she was really looking for attention. And in order to get Abe's attention, she would perhaps flirt with other men to make him jealous, to let him know that she liked him. But they almost didn't get married, and then they almost did get married, and then it was back and forth. But he was devastated, and then she was devastated. Well, then they finally got married. And he gave her a gold ring, and he inscribed within it, "Love is forever. Love is forever." He was a deep soul, and she was a deep soul. She was very intelligent. Well, then her father came and gave them like a dowry, and they had enough money to buy a house, buy some land. And he established a good law practice, and he was very successful. And then they had 4 children. But you know, in those days, they didn't have medicine, and when disease came, it was very, very common for children to not make it. And so I'll just sum it up. Out of 4 children, only 1 child survived. And it was heartbreaking to them. And then the Civil War, of course. And I encourage all of you to try to watch this documentary or this on the History Channel. and look up your own information on him. But Abraham Lincoln, you know, probably had the hardest job of any president, to have the America be divided. A house divided against itself cannot stand, and it was torturous to him to try to bring the Union together. And we all know his famous speeches. And God gave him a brilliance. And then this tragedy of his assassination. But he was very, very responsible for stopping slavery. He was dedicated to that cause and to bringing the Union together. And what a legacy. What a great man. And you know, I went to a high school called Lincoln. I was thinking about this. And it's in Tacoma. And if you're ever there, you can drive by. It's a beautiful high school. And it was built. I didn't know this when I went there, but I looked up. And the architects of Lincoln High School had designed it after Eton College in England. You know, the famous boys' school where all the young aristocratic boys go to Eton. You know, the Tales, and it's near Windsor, and then they go on to Cambridge or Oxford. Well, this high school I went to was designed after that. Beautiful high school. And there is a wonderful statue outside of Abraham Lincoln that is just beautiful, and I have a picture by it. It's in my high school annual. I think everybody would get a picture by it because it was the famous, we were the Lincoln Abes, you know. And then there was a big bowl there, a natural bowl, where all the football games were played and track meets, and just a wonderful place. And so Abraham Lincoln has always been very close to my heart. I think he's close to all of our hearts. You just study him, and you, just like Fritz Kreisler, you feel close to him. You feel he's so down to earth. He's so humble and so touchable, and yet he is so dignified and great. And he had an insight and understanding into human beings. And he's so many wonderful quotes by Abraham Lincoln. Well, I feel that we are very privileged people to live in a free country, in a country that's not at war. And I am praying every day for, like I said, our friends across the ocean that are suffering so much right now. And just pray that it will be resolved quickly and the suffering will end. War is such a terrible thing. Ultimately, it feels like everyone loses in the end of it because of all the pain and suffering. But this too shall pass. Nothing lasts forever. That's a comfort, and that's a hope, isn't it? Yes. Well, I just thank you so much for joining me for tea today. And I encourage you to study George Washington, study Abraham Lincoln. So many books have been written. There's so much online, and just get acquainted with these wonderful men that gave their all. Truly, you could say they gave their all. And Abraham Lincoln was also a real Christian. He didn't always go to church, but he was a Bible Christian, and then eventually he did attend church. But they lived so far out in the, Kentucky hills that they had to make do with what they had. And it's the American story. And I learned something about log cabins. The log cabin actually came from Norway. Isn't that interesting? Oh my goodness. I'm hearing, do you hear that song? That's the Vitali Chacon. That is one of my favorite violin pieces. It's a prayer. My children that play violin, all of them played that piece. Their teacher, Helen, would give everybody at a certain point the Vitali Chacon. Oh, and I loved it. I felt so privileged to sit in those violin lessons and hear that wonderful music. And I feel so grateful for good music teachers, all teachers, most important people in the world. Well, it has been so nice to be with you today, and I pray you have a good week. And keep looking up. Spring is coming. It's been very cold, but the sun was shining today, and you know the flowers are coming. Yes, the wintry February flowers, and I see the crocus poking out. I have a few daffodils that I see are coming out, and some tulips. So, you know, the primroses, that's the flower that is so amazing, that the primrose just survives this winter cold and comes through with a message of spring is coming. Spring is coming. That's what I feel the primrose is saying. And I will tell you a really quick little story, and I'll close with this. About 5 nights ago, I had gone to bed, I was sound asleep, and about 5:30 or 6 in the morning, outside my window, a bird was chirp, chirp, chirp. I mean, he was saying, get up, get up, get up. And it was like, I kept hearing him say, spring is coming, spring is, I thought, whoa. So I shook myself out of bed and stumbled out. Of course, it was dark. It wasn't light yet. It was just barely getting light. And I thought, wow, I've never heard a bird so dramatic. So I went downstairs. There, before my eyes, was a streak of pink and blue and sun coming up over the mountains, over the trees, over the bay. God was painting the most incredible sunrise picture for me. And do you know, it only lasted 5 minutes, and then it was gone, and the rest of the day were gray skies. And I think my little bird woke me up to see the painting. Isn't that extravagant? The abundance of God's color is stunning. It takes my breath away. And I wrote a poem about that. And next time I will read it to you. Okay. Well, thanks again for joining me. And I pray you all have a wonderful week. We pray for our friends across the ocean. This war would be stopped and resolved and no more suffering. We ask God for mercy and peace. Yes. Well, have a wonderful week, and don't forget to have a cup of tea and share it with someone. Thank you, and God bless. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.